Who was King Arthur? A legendary warrior king with a magical sword and noble knights? Or was he based on a real historical figure whose deeds were embellished over centuries? Today we're exploring one of history's most enduring mysteries, the truth behind the legend of King Arthur. We've all heard of Excalibur, the sword in the stone, the Knights of the Round Table, and the wizard Merlin. But separating fact from fiction is challenging when examining a figure who supposedly lived 1,500 years ago. The first comprehensive account of King Arthur comes from Geoffrey of Monmouth's History of the Kings of Britain, written around 1136 AD, over 600 years after Arthur supposedly lived. Geoffrey describes Arthur as a mighty king who defeated the Saxons and established an empire across Britain and Europe in the 5th to 6th centuries. The historical context is crucial. After the Romans withdrew from Britain around 410 AD, the island faced waves of invasions from Germanic peoples. This chaotic period, known as the Dark Ages, left few written records. Our earliest potential reference comes from a monk named Gildas, who wrote around 540 AD about a decisive British victory against the Saxons at Baden Hill. Interestingly, Gildas names the British leader not as Arthur, but as Ambrosius Aurelianus. The first mention of Arthur by name appears in the 9th century History of the Britons, where he's described not as a king, but as a military commander who led the Britons in 12 battles against the Saxons. Later, the 10th century Welsh annals mention Arthur's victory at Baden in 516 AD and his death at Camelot in 537 AD. So our first historical possibility emerges. Arthur may have been a Romano-British military leader who fought Saxon invaders in the late 5th century. But why did this possibly real figure transform into the centerpiece of medieval legend? After the Norman conquest in 1066, the Arthur legends became a form of cultural resistance for the subjugated Celtic peoples. Geoffrey of Monmouth's popular work drew on these traditions and substantially embellished them. Later writers added more elements. The French poet Chrétien de Troyes introduced the Holy Grail and Lancelot in the 12th century, while Sir Thomas Malory's 15th century Le Morte d'Arthur established the version most familiar today. What can archaeology tell us about a potential historical Arthur? Excavations confirm the 5th to 6th centuries were indeed turbulent times in Britain. Sites like Cadbury Castle in Somerset show extensive fortifications dating precisely to Arthur's supposed lifetime, representing power centres that could have served as a base for a war leader. Several historical figures might have inspired the Arthur legend. Ambrosius Aurelianus, the Romano-British leader mentioned by Gildas Riothemus, a king of the Britons who campaigned in Gaul around 470 AD. Lucius Artorius Castus, a Roman commander from the 2 and 3 RD century whose name resembles Arthur Owain Dantgwyn, a 5th century Welsh ruler whose nickname the Bear, Welsh Arth, connects to Arthur. The most likely scenario, there was probably a significant British leader who fought against Saxon invaders in the late 5th or early 6th century. His victories, especially at Baden Hill, were remembered in an age with few written records. Over generations, his story merged with other tales, folk memories, and pure invention to create the Arthur we know today. What's fascinating isn't just whether Arthur existed, but how his legend has evolved over 15 centuries to remain relevant to each new generation. From a barely mentioned war leader to the center of a vast literary tradition, Arthur represents our enduring fascination with this mysterious period when Roman Britain transformed into medieval England. We may never know with certainty who the real Arthur was or if he existed at all, but his cultural impact is undeniable. The legend has outlived whatever man may have inspired it, making Arthur more significant than any historical figure could be. Whether fact or fiction, the stories of Arthur, Camelot, and the Knights of the Round Table continue to inspire us with ideals of justice, courage, and the belief that even in the darkest times, heroes can emerge to change the course of history.